Mike, thanks for your time. Texas State, the Pac-12, they voted to spend the $5 million, and now they've already been accepted by the Pac-12. When did this push really start for Texas State that this could be possible?
Well, I think the conversation started last summer as the Pac-12 kind of dissolved and then added some Mountain West teams. And Texas State had conversations with the Mountain West. I believe they had conversations with the Americans. And then as the Pac-12 kind of started building itself, putting itself back together again and needed an extra team, I think Texas State, being in the market that they're in, was really enticing. And so I think it was a year-long effort, kind of weighing the options, playing them against each other. And for the Bobcats, I think it was a no-brainer move.
What does this conference enable them to maybe do long-term that some of the other ones wouldn't?
I think it's just a name brand recognition. They're going to be playing against Boise State. They're going to be playing against Washington State and Oregon State. They're going to have Gonzaga come to San Marcos to play basketball. Since they've moved away from the Southwest Texas State branding, like their whole mission was to get more global within the state and then more national outside of it. And when Kelly Damphouse, the current university president, was hired, he was given 6 bullet points. And the first one was to make the brand more national, and the last one was to fix athletics, and that really meant fix football. And he told me, if I could fix football, I can fix the first one, right? If our football program can become respectable and can be on the biggest stages, that will make us more national. That's been 2.5 years now, and I think they've achieved that. And we've seen how much they're talking. I mean, we're talking about it right now. We don't talk much Texas State on these kind of podcasts. And so I think that was their mission, was to get a better brand, to get a bigger brand, and the Pac-12 and the schools within it allow them to do that.
What do you think about the Pac-12 now being in Texas? Now, Mike, it's not, no matter how many faithful want to spin it on Twitter as it's still where it was. It's not, and that's okay. But what do you think of what Oregon State, Washington State have been able to put together and now having that Texas presence as well?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's an interesting one, right? UTEP's moving to the Mountain West, Texas State now in the Pac-12. Like in next year's magazine, we're going to have 7 of the 10 conferences like represented within our state between the 13 programs. So, when this magazine was started, they were pretty much all in the Southwest Conference, and now, we're spread out to 7 different conferences. I think for Texas State getting into the Pac-12, again, it's just national brand recognition. And it just sets the table for them to grow bigger and bigger. It's such a big university that I think their aspirations were beyond the Sun Belt. And now we'll see if they're able to hit the ground running, because that's my biggest question, right? It's like, of course, you're going to take the extra money. I think now the Pac-12 is probably in the argument to be the best G5. I guess now it'll be G6. It'll be Power 4 and G6. I have to change the way I say that. It's probably going to be, in that conversation with the American as the best, G6 conference. And so if you're Texas State, you see it as, well, if we can start winning that conference, we're going to go to the college football playoff. And I talked to Don Coryell, their AD today, and he said, he didn't mix words. Like, that is their goal. And they think getting into that conference gets them closer to doing it.
Would they be doing this, and would this all be happening if G.J. Kinney was not their football coach?
I don't think so. Well, I mean, maybe if a different coach had come in and had the same level of success, but you beat a Baylor, you win 8 games back to back. He's just a young, hip, cool guy. I think the recruiting's been really good. It's allowed the boosters and the donors and the students to rally behind the football team in a way that they hadn't before. I joked with those guys today, like Texas State always won the tailgate. It was just a struggle to get those students inside the stadium. Kinney, along with Damphouse and Coryell, have really had a groundswell of support. You go to a Texas State game now, and it's unrecognizable from the atmosphere that it was 5 years ago. And that's a credit to all of them, including Coach Kinney, for sure.
What has it meant, you think? It is now something that's kind of a must-see deal. What does it mean to the campus? How much of this rubs off on what's going on in San Marcos?
I would imagine a lot. They're having more and more students. They have over 40,000 students there. That's only trailing A&M, Texas, Houston, and North Texas. Like, they're the 5th biggest university in this state. They're a big public school right in the middle of 2 growing metropolises in Austin and San Antonio. And I'm lucky. I get to go to all these campuses, watch football games. Like, Texas State's the coolest campus. Like, Texas State is the best college town in the state. And I think it's going to allow more and more people to understand that, from the Square to the river running around it. But, as we know, I remember after TCU made that run in the national championship, their admissions jumped. After SMU's run last year, admissions jumped. Like football and athletics, but football specifically is the front porch of the university, is the neon sign that gets people in there. And a lot of us, when we went to college, one of the reasons we picked our colleges was to go have an experience and to go to games on Saturday and to enjoy that community. The bigger the games, the more that's true. And I think for Texas State, they're gonna see more and more of the benefit of that when they're playing against helmets that have national brand recognition and that the students have played on the video game and grown up watching. That's not really true with Troy and ULM, but I think it is true with Boise State and Washington State and some of the others.
Do you think this gives them any kind of recruiting advantage when it comes to recruiting against those teams, seeing as now they can say they're in Texas?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think they're already starting to see some recruiting gains over this last week or two on some commits that maybe they didn't think that they were going to get before, because they've been able to, kind of behind the scenes be like, hey, we're about to be a Pac-12 program. We're about to be a Pac-12 program. And I agree that the Pac-12 isn't what it was 5 years ago, but it's still better than where they were. And I think it gives them the ability to argue that they're in the fifth best conference in the country. I don't know if I would buy the argument, but I think the argument's there to be made, that now they are in the best conference of any other G5 program in the state. If you can go win the Pac-12, you're going to be in the CFP. I'm not sure that was true in the Sun Belt. And so that's got to help recruiting. And, as much as college football's changed, this is still about talent acquisition. And the more you can, acquire, the easier it is. And, I think Kenny's a good recruiter. He's a good evaluator. And now he doesn't have to work against his conference and the money. They're going to have more money to go recruit. And in the rev share world, that's going to matter as well.
Mike, I don't know. Kind of trying to figure out how to ask this question. UTSA got brought up in these conversations, and clearly it became a money thing as much as anything for them. Do you think there's some envy that they see Texas State joining the pack, or do they know that, hey, they're in a good spot, they had to make the choice they had to make, and the future is bright? How do you kind of feel like they're taking this down in San Antonio?
Well, I think that's a great question. They don't have a $24 million check to pay to get out of the American, right? Getting $5 million to get out of the Sun Belt different than $24 million to get out of the American. Even if you're going to make more money in the Pac-12, you're not going to make up that difference. I think the way it impacts UTSA is just in recruiting. They've been able to kind of little brother Texas State in that way on the recruiting trail. One, because Jeff Traylor's just established a winner. And so until GJ has done that, now maybe they're equals in terms of on the field thing, especially after Texas State blew them out last year. But I think UTSA has been able to recruit to the conference. We're the American Conference. We're with Tulane. We're with Memphis. If we win here, we're the best G5 conference. Well, with the Pac-12 putting itself together and then including the team, your rival, right down I-35, maybe that recruiting pitch isn't as easy to sell. So I'm not sure if the university itself feels like, this move is that gigantic for Texas State, compared to UTSA. But I would imagine Jeff Traylor's job is a little bit harder on the recruiting trail than it was last week.
You mentioned the money. I was going to ask you about the money. Is this an extra $1 million or $2 million from what they were making, or more than that at the Sun Belt?
I think it's about triple, if not more, than what they were making in the Sun Belt. In the Sun Belt, the media rights, the Sun Belt's a great conference. We all love the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt, they have regionality. A lot of those schools really care about football, and they fill their stadiums. I love the Sun Belt, but the media rights deal is $2 million a year. Even if they don't get a full share right away in the Pac-12, and there's still kind of some ambiguity on what that is. I had them both on a podcast today, and they were kind of non-committal on kind of if they're getting a full share and when that would kick in. But even if they get mostly a partial share and it's $6 to $8 million a year, even with the added travel budget, that's still a double or triple amount. And in the revenue share world, that's a starting quarterback. That's a backcourt basketball. That's keeping GJ Kinney from taking another job if possible, and get him in a contract like the one Jeff Traylor has at UTSA. And so I think the money and the brand recognition just made this to where, it's something that Texas State couldn't refuse, and something that I think they're very fortunate to be part of. They were right team, right time.
I saw a note from you earlier today. You had released, Dave Campbell had released the all-Texas college football team, and, a lot of the schools you'd expect to have a chunk or more or on it. We haven't really gone over the team, but I did look at it. It was very kind of fun to watch. But you made the comment, and I did see this, that a lot of schools were putting that information out because they were excited about being a part of it. And that wasn't the case if you would have done that when you arrived. When was it? A couple of 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sit here and toot my horn or anything. I think Dave Campbell has done a good job of positioning itself more into the college world. You know, like on my end, I kind of work against my brand a little bit. You know, like we're such, you know, like the kings of high school football, and everybody knows us for that. And that's awesome. That's great. That's a credit to everybody at that company for the last 60, 65 years. But I do think it's easy to forget that we do a lot of college stuff, and we have done a lot of college stuff, you know, before me, David Oven, and, you know, Shahan, and, you know, like it didn't start with me at all. But it's just getting the SIDs and getting those programs to kind of, you know, pub that stuff for you. It's free marketing, and you can't replace it. And it's just a relationship business, as you guys know. And it's just building those relationships across the state as much as possible.
Well, this all Texas team that you guys did, Mike, this clearly like took a lot of work, because there's a lot of talent you have to sift through. Whenever I've had to vote for an all whatever team, I do spend a larger amount of time on the phone with SIDs or any coaches I may know to like help me, like tell me why this guy's better than this guy. What's your process for building this team?
Yeah, it is the most stressful part of doing the magazine, in my opinion. And I guess the way I do it is I put the for sure's on there first. Like I kind of go through each position and I'm like, who has to be on there, right? Like Keaton Thomas, Josh Cameron, like who has to be there? And then I just see what the holes are left. You know, some positions are easier than others. I would say offensive line is probably the toughest, because it's like, unless you're an expert, an offensive line coach or something, like who the hell knows? So you can trust the PFF numbers if you want to, but that's the one I probably rely on the coaches the most. The problem is that everybody in the state's in the running, and so they're just lobbying for their own guys and lobbying against their rivals' guys, you know, and so it's hard to take the coach's opinion all that seriously on this kind of stuff, you know, for obvious reasons. So I guess I just try to identify the folks that I think are guaranteed to be on the list that like you can't argue against, and then it just kind of gets tough as you go, you know, through the two deep. I'm just lucky because we're doing the magazine at the same time. I'm able to go to all these places, talk to the coaches, and you just kind of get a feel for who they're talking about in those kind of terms, and then you just try to do the best you can. But it's a thankless day. I mean, I've gotten more texts today from coaches being upset with me than have been happy.
That's always the case. That is always the case. What you need to do is I do this when I do an all high school team. All right, you can put so-and-so on the team, who you taking off. Make the coach replace somebody that you have on that team with his player and see if he'll maybe be able to do that.
That would be pretty bold to be like, okay, take off Le'Veon Moss. Go ahead, coach. You tell me why your guy's better, and then see if he does that. Mike, sometimes that would go well. Sometimes it probably wouldn't. Yeah,
they either block you, hang up on you, or cuss you out, but at least you'd get a good reaction from them. But that's kind of one of the rules, because you have a team, whether there's 2 or 3 running backs or 1 or whatever it is, 4 wide receivers, and it's easy to go, well, what about, like I did see a note about Baylor's very talented Trigg, the tight end. Well, what about him? Well, there's only one tight end. So you got to make a decision that not everybody makes the team.
Yeah. And then for us as well, it's like we're trying to be somewhat inclusive. You know, like we want to have, you know, at least a member from every single program on there, because like we try to cover it in a similar way we cover high school, where it's like, is the 2A quarterback better than the 6A quarterback? Probably not. But if they're like more valuable to their football team, then maybe they make the Dave Campbell's All Texas team in a way that the 6A quarterback doesn't. And so tight end's tough because it's got the fewest people. Like I get 10 offensive linemen, I get 6 linebackers. Quarterback, tight end, like those are the toughest because there's only 2 of them. There's a first team and a second team. Quarterback was the one that I felt was impossible, and the one that I kind of like texted around to coaches and were like, "You're going to be mad at me, but I could only pick 2." So that's just what it is. It's just a really good year for quarterbacks, and trying to narrow it down to 2 before the season was very hard.
What are your thoughts with BYU now losing Jake Retzloff because of the issue and the story behind that legally, and the lawsuit now has been dismissed, but he's gone. Well, he will be leaving. He will be signing somewhere else with somebody. He is a graduate. Who benefits, in your opinion, Mike, the most with Retzloff leaving?
Well, in our state, it's TCU and Texas Tech. TCU's over under was set 6.5, which I thought was really, really low and kind of odd anyway. But now, I would imagine the BYU game was considered a loss by Vegas in that column. And so, I think TCU is one that benefits from that. And then also Texas Tech. Like, if you look at their schedule, they have a couple tricky road games, Utah, Arizona State. But their toughest home game was BYU. And now, on paper at least, that seems like that would be a much more winnable game where, they should probably run the table and be undefeated at home. And if they can go, 500 on the road in conference or somehow come out on the top half of the ledger there on the road, they're probably going to be in Arlington. So for a team that was trying to win 9 or 10 games, if one of the toughest ones that you're playing against don't have a quarterback, all of a sudden you look at that one a little bit easier than you did before. And I still think it's kind of Arlington or bust for the Red Raiders this year.
Now that Texas State's done this, and it's somewhat with what Craig was also bringing up earlier, but Texas State, what UTSA have done, we know about the schools that are either in the SEC or elsewhere, the Big 12. Which school in Texas right now has to look around and go, man, where did all our furniture go? What do we need to do? Who needs to step up?
That's a really good question. I kind of, at the Power 4 level, it might be Baylor. TCU has the Metroplex. Now SMU is a Power 4 school, so that's one more team in a recruiting area that you really recruit at. That's going to crowd the market. I think SMU's got a top 20 high school recruiting class right now. Texas Tech and Cody Campbell are obviously very committed to spending and playing big boy football in the transfer portal and recruiting. And I say this all the time. It's not an original thought, but college football is as enjoyable as it is miserable for your rivals. And if you're Baylor, you're measuring yourself against TCU. You're measuring yourself against Texas Tech. TCU went to a national championship not too long ago. If Texas Tech has a big year here, I think you have to look around and go, are we getting passed up? We were probably, number 3 in the state 5 years ago. We've had so much success, more than a lot of these other programs. But if they're spending at this level and the world's about, revenue share wise, do we have the donors? Do we have the base that is willing to go play that game? And if not, it's going to be hard to keep up with SMU. It's going to be hard to keep up with Texas Tech. And those are two programs that you were far and away better than, for most of the last couple of decades. And so I guess I look at Baylor and their place in the pecking order in the hierarchy and just wonder if they're going to play ball like some of these other programs. Houston's another one, where it's you have the city of Houston. You've always been the sleeping giant. But you've had 30 years of apathy there with that fan base of just not playing against teams that you deem worthy enough, and you can just go to an Astros game or a Rockets game or a Texans game. Will Houston get the donors and the money to keep up with these other schools? So those are two programs that I kind of look at and I go okay, you're going to have to get at the table and decide if you really want to do this thing because the teams around you clearly are.
Their NIL collective, GXG, has stepped up a great deal. Mac Rhodes was in studio with us, a week or two ago, and said that they are all in, but then you got to go do it and figure it out. And it seems like they're trying, but you're right, man. If you blink, you could be behind the curve really, really quickly. Mike, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Mike Craven, Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. As I mentioned, that magazine came out in the last days or 2 or 3. I don't know exactly if they're on the bookshelves or not, but I got a box when I got back from out of town yesterday evening, opening them up. It's a Sark picture on the front. Just says Sark with UT as the cover boy. And, of course, there's a high school football cover boy or group is Salina High School football team.